Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really tackling something that I think every single language learner needs to hear, especially if you're feeling a bit stuck.
That's right. This is for anyone who's ever opened a textbook and just felt that, that feeling of dread, all those grammar rules, the long vocabulary lists.
Exactly. We're looking for a real shortcut, a method that can, well, dramatically speed up your skills without all the usual pain and struggle.
And we think we've found it. We're looking at a technique that promises fluency not through hard work, but actually through pleasure.
Yeah, and our sources on this are, they're really fascinating. We've got research from academic studies in Vietnam, papers on cognitive neuroscience, linguistic reports,
Mm-hmm.
and they all seem to point to this one surprisingly simple idea. The secret isn't reading short, complicated texts.
No.
It's reading a lot of stuff that is easy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the key part, material that you actually enjoy.
We call it extensive reading, or ER for short. And we're going to show today why that traditional belief that learning has to be difficult to be effective is, well, it's just wrong.
So this deep dive is really for you, the listener. If you want to gain knowledge fast, you want to avoid that burnout from information overload, and you're looking for that aha moment.
That moment where the language just starts to click. We're going to define ER, show you the science, the benefits, linguistic, emotional, all of it, and give you some really practical ways to start today.
Right, like using these special books called graded readers. We'll get into all of that.
We'll even dive into some surprising science about how your brain learns vocabulary. Like why, in some cases, verbs might actually be easier to learn than nouns.
Okay, that I want to hear about. So let's unpack this.
Yes.
Where do we start? I think we have to clearly define what extensive reading is and maybe more importantly, what it isn't.
Yeah, let's start with the simplest definition. Extensive reading, at its core, is just reading longer, easier texts for a good amount of time.
Longer and easier.
The main goal isn't some kind of deep, meticulous analysis.
You're not writing a paper on it.
No, not at all. The goal is pleasure. Or just getting the general idea of the story. It's about speed, volume, and just being engaged.
That word easy, I think that's the big hurdle for people. We've all been taught that if you're not struggling, you're not learning.
And that struggle is what we call intensive reading, or IR. That's what most of us did in school.
Right, okay, so let's contrast those two. When I think of intensive reading, I picture a short, maybe 300-word paragraph in a textbook.
Mm-hmm. And it's dense.
Super dense. And the goal was always extreme accuracy. You had to answer these really specific questions, translate sentences, find every grammar rule.
Exactly. And in that model, the material is chosen by the teacher, right?
Right.
It's usually difficult on purpose to expose you to something new and complex.
And when you find a word you don't know, what do?
You stop. You have to. You pull out the dictionary, you look it up, you write it down, you try to memorize it.
That just sounds like a recipe for exhaustion.
Yeah.
I mean, one difficult sentence and the whole thing just breaks down. The flow is gone.
The flow is gone and you feel like you have to finish it even if you hate the topic. It turns reading into homework.
A chore.
It creates a huge emotional barrier. Now, let's flip that completely. Look at expensive reading. The goal is no longer analysis. It's fluency, immersion, and enjoyment.
And the material is easy.
Fundamentally easy and varied. And most importantly,
The choice is mine. I get to pick what I read.
yes, the student chooses. So you're reading for meaning, for the story. You're reading so much that one single word doesn't really matter that much.
Okay, so what's the rule for the dictionary in ER?
The rule is no dictionary.
At all.
Ideally, zero dictionary use during the reading session itself. Because if you're stopping every few lines, you're just destroying the momentum. You're destroying the pleasure.
So what if a book is too hard? What if I'm hitting too many unknown words?
Then the solution isn't to look them up. The solution is to change the book.
Just drop it.
Drop it immediately. Find something easier. That's the freedom of ER. It removes that pressure to be perfect.
That's a huge mental shift. I love that. And I know there are some official rules for this, right? The core tenets of ER.
There are, and they're really the roadmap. The first one is probably the hardest for perfectionists. Learners should read as much as possible.
Volume is king.
Volume is king, not difficulty. It's like running for distance, not trying to lift the heaviest weight possible.
Great analogy. Okay, what's next?
The second principle is that the material must be easy. And we'll get into what easy really means later. But it has to be well within your current ability. And varied, of course, because if it's boring, you'll just stop.
Right, motivation is the fuel.
Which brings us to number 3. The purpose is pleasure, information, or general understanding. Reading is its own reward.
Love that. The second it becomes an assignment for a grade.
The magic is gone. You're back in that intensive mindset.
Okay, what else?
Reading speed should be faster, not slower. Because the text is easy, your brain isn't decoding every word. It can just glide over the text, and that naturally builds up your pace.
And you do this alone, right? Silently.
Yes, that's principle 5. It's usually individual and silent. It lets you get into your own flow without any pressure.
Okay, and the sixth one. This one feels like it really challenges the whole idea of a classroom. It's about what happens after you read.
It does. The rule is there should be few or no follow-up exercises. No quizzes, no tests.
But wait, how do we know we're actually improving if we're not tested? What stops someone from just, skimming the page?
It's a fair question. And we will talk about some accountability methods. But the philosophy is that the sheer volume of reading leads to subconscious learning. You internalize the grammar and vocabulary without needing a test to prove it.
So the improvement is baked into the process itself.
Exactly. And the final rule is about the teacher or the guide. Their job is to be a role model, to be excited about reading, and to explain why this works. Because for most people, this is a completely new way of thinking.
It really is. It sounds like you either enter this vicious circle of traditional learning, or you find this virtuous circle with ER.
Let's quickly paint a picture of that vicious circle. It starts with difficult reading.
Which leads to low comprehension. You don't understand what's going on.
And because you don't understand, you read very slowly.
Which is zero fun, no enjoyment.
So you read very little. And because you read little,
You don't get any better. It's a spiral of failure. I think we've all been there.
we have. But the virtuous circle starts with easy reading, which immediately leads to good understanding.
And when you understand something, you enjoy it.
When you enjoy it, you do it often. Reading becomes a habit, not a chore.
And that habit, that frequency, is what leads to real fluency. Vocabulary, grammar, it all just clicks.
It's about building this effortless momentum where the process itself makes you better.
Okay, so the philosophy is powerful. But for the skeptics, we need to get into the why. Let's talk about the science. What is actually happening in our brains when we read a story that's different from, say, memorizing a grammar chart?
This is where it gets really compelling. From a neurological standpoint, learning through stories is just incredibly efficient. It engages multiple parts of your brain at the same time, creating these really strong, lasting neural pathways.
So these are different pathways than the ones I use just to memorize a list of words.
Completely different. Rote memorization creates very fragile, purely linguistic connections. But research from neuroscience shows something amazing. Reading fiction activates the same brain regions you would use if you were having that experience in real life.
Wait, break that down for me. If I read a sentence like, he walked through the cold, damp forest, what's my brain doing?
Well, the parts of your brain that process sensory information, the feeling of cold, the smell of damp earth, they actually light up. The motor cortex that controls walking activates. Your brain, in a very real sense, doesn't fully distinguish between imagining the action through reading and actually doing it.
That is incredible. So reading a story is like a full-body workout for your brain. It's a virtual reality simulator.
It's the perfect analogy. You're practicing social interactions, emotional responses, physical actions, all in the safety of a book. The language used to describe those scenes becomes deeply connected to a simulated experience.
And this ties into something called transportation theory, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you get so lost in a story that you forget you're even reading, that's being transported. In that state, you have this huge emotional engagement, which is critical. It lowers all the mental barriers that normally block learning.
So the fun of the story isn't just a nice bonus. It's the actual engine for learning. The language gets encoded with emotions and sensory details.
Precisely. The story provides the context, and context is everything for memory.
Okay, but for this to work, for me to get transported, the story have to flow. Which brings us back to that idea of the right level.
Exactly. You may have heard of Krashen's theory, the I+1 idea.
Right, the idea that the input should be just one step beyond what you already know.
It's a useful concept, but it's a bit vague. How do you measure +1? For extensive reading, we have a much more practical, a much more precise metric.
And this is something every A2 and B1 listener really needs to hear.
For ER to be truly effective and pleasurable, research shows that you should already know about 98% of the words in the text.
98%. That means only 2 unknown words in every 100. That sounds almost too easy.
I know it does, but it's critical. It's all about cognitive load.
Mm.
If you know 98% of the words, your brain is basically on autopilot. It's not struggling to decode. All of its energy can go toward understanding the story, the meaning, the flow.
And what happens if I try to push it, say, to 90%? That's 10 unknown words per 100.
At 90%, you're in what I call cognitive quicksand. Every few seconds, you're stopping. You're trying to guess from context. You lose the story, the flow is gone, the pleasure is gone. It becomes tedious decoding again, not reading.
So the 98% rule isn't about being lazy. It's about being smart. It's about optimizing your brain for absorption.
Exactly. And when a text is too hard, it triggers anxiety. And that brings us to the affective filter.
Let's go deep on that. What is the effective filter?
Imagine your brain has a shield. When you feel stressed, anxious, or frustrated, like when you're trying to read a difficult text, that shield goes up.
Okay. And when the shield is up,
New language can't get in. The words might hit your eyes, but they don't get processed into long-term knowledge. It's like pouring water on a closed umbrella. Extensive reading, because it's easy and fun, lowers that shield.
so by making it enjoyable, we're actually making the brain more receptive to learning. We're opening the gate.
We are turning the brain into a sponge, and that is the foundation for everything that follows.
The theory makes perfect sense. But let's get to the proof. What does the data say? What are the actual measurable linguistic benefits of this?
The benefits are huge, and they're across the board. First, let's talk about vocabulary and spelling. With ER, you're getting massive, repeated exposure to words.
But not in a list, in context.
In meaningful, different contexts, you might see the word wander 5 times in a chapter, but each time it means something slightly different because of the story. You just absorb it naturally.
So you're building vocabulary without flashcards.
Exactly. And you're constantly seeing words spelled correctly, so your own spelling intuition just gets better over time. It becomes automatic.
What about something like grammar? That's usually the hardest part for people.
Well, ER helps you develop an intuitive feel for grammar and writing style. Instead of memorizing rules, you start to internalize the patterns of the language. You just know what sounds right.
Like learning the melody of a song instead of just reading the sheet music?
That's a perfect way to put it. And this shows up in writing. People who read a lot tend to write with better organization, more complex sentences, and they use more natural-sounding expressions.
And the third big one is fluency, right?
Yes, ER dramatically improves your reading speed and your accuracy.
At the same time.
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive. You'd think going faster means more mistakes.
But it's because of that automaticity we keep talking about. When you know 98% of the words, you stop seeing individual words. You see chunks, phrases. Your brain doesn't have to work so hard on decoding, so it can focus on comprehension. You get faster and more accurate.
Let's make this really concrete. I want to talk about that study from our sources, the one with university students in Vietnam. It's just such a powerful piece of evidence.
It's a fantastic study. So for 15 weeks, they had one group do 100 minutes of extensive reading every week. The other group, the control group, just did the normal intensive textbook work.
Okay, and at the start, both groups were reading pretty slowly, right? Around 120 words per minute.
Very slowly. And for context, the goal for a fluent foreign language reader is about 250 words per minute. So they had a long way to go.
So after 15 weeks, what happens to the traditional intensive group?
They barely improved their speed. They gained just over 3 words per minute.
3, wow. So all that hard work for basically nothing.
Pretty much. But the extensive reading group,
What was their gain?
they gained an average of 12.44 words per minute.
12. That's almost 4 times the improvement.
A massive difference. It proves that ER is what builds that fluency, that speed.
Okay, but here's the crucial question again. Did they understand less because they were reading faster?
Not at all. This is the part that should convince any skeptic. They tested reading comprehension. The intensive group barely improved their score. They went up by less than half a point out of 10.
And the ER group, the ones reading for fun.
Their comprehension scores went up by 1.72 points. Again, 4 times better. They got faster and they understood more.
That's the takeaway. Reading easy, enjoyable texts makes you a faster and a better reader. Period.
Absolutely. But the benefits aren't just linguistic. There are huge affective and cognitive benefits too.
Affective, meaning our feelings and attitudes about learning.
Yes. Because you're succeeding, ER builds a positive attitude. It lowers anxiety, boosts confidence, and maybe most importantly, it creates lifelong reading habits. You keep doing it because you like it.
So the learning never really stops.
Exactly. And cognitively, you're also increasing your general knowledge. You're learning about history, culture, science, all through these stories.
And there was that long-term finding too, right?
Yes, reading for pleasure has been shown to help preserve cognitive function later in life. It's like exercise for your brain. So you're not just learning a language, you're investing in your long-term mental health.
Okay, this is all incredibly convincing. So let's move from the why to the how. I'm an A2 or B1 listener. I can't just pick up a native level novel. Where do I find these easy, engaging materials?
That is the most important practical question, and the answer is graded readers, GRs. They are your absolute best friend when you start this journey.
So define what a graded reader is. It's not just a children's book, right?
No, and that's a key distinction. Children's books can sometimes have very specific or even obscure vocabulary. Graded readers are books that are specifically written or adapted for language learners.
So they're designed with us in mind.
They're engineered for us. They are carefully controlled to hit that 98% comprehensibility target.
And how are they graded? What does that mean?
It's based on vocabulary, specifically on the number of head words used.
What's a head word?
A head word is the base form of a word family. So run, ran, and running are all just one head word. Run.
I see.
So a level 1 book might use only 500 unique head words. A level 2 might use 600, and so on. This system lets you pick a book and know, with confidence, that it's going to be at the right level for you.
That takes all the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
And all the big publishers have these.
Yes, Oxford, Pearson, Penguin, Cambridge, they all have huge libraries of graded readers in English and many other languages. They are the perfect starting point.
What about that argument that they aren't authentic material?
I think that's a misunderstanding of what authentic means. These books are written with a real purpose, to communicate a story to a specific audience, language learners. That is an authentic communicative act. They are a bridge to get you to native materials.
I think you mentioned a digital example.
Yeah, for Spanish learners, there's a great free resource called Seri Liamos. It was created by students for students, and it has stories, vocabulary lists, and often audiobooks to go with them, which is fantastic for combining reading and listening.
Okay, that brings up another practical point. Accountability. If we're not doing tests, how do we track progress?
We use an honor system, but you still need to document the work. The simplest way is a reading log.
What goes in the log?
Just the basics,
Right.
the date, the book title, how many minutes you read, maybe how many pages. You're tracking volume and consistency, not checking for understanding.
In for a little more depth.
A reading journal. Just write a few sentences in the target language about the book. Was it easy? Was it fun? This makes you reflect on the process.
And for a group setting.
A simple book chat. You just get together and tell your classmates about the book you read. You recommend it or not. It's low-pressure speaking practice.
Okay, let's quickly cover a few active techniques that you can pair with all this reading.
Absolutely. The first one is crucial for pronunciation: shadowing.
This is where you just listen to audio and speak along with it, right?
You try to copy the speaker in real time, like a shadow. This trains the muscles in your mouth to make the sounds of the new language. It's physical therapy for your accent.
I love that.
Okay.
Okay, what's next?
The second is a mental habit: thinking aloud.
Right.
This is how you break the habit of translating in your head.
So you just start thinking in the target language.
You start small, very simple thoughts. I am hungry. The weather's nice. You think it internally first, and then you start saying it aloud when you're alone. It forces you to work with the language you actually have.
It builds that automaticity. And the third technique,
The 3x3 method. This is for any audio or video that has a transcript. First, you listen 3 times without looking at the text. Just get the main idea.
Okay.
Then you pause, look at key vocabulary. Then you listen 3 more times, focusing on the rhythm and pronunciation. And for the final step, you listen while reading along. It hits listening, reading, and vocabulary all at once.
that's a powerful routine. Okay, let's get into the really deep, nuanced part of this. The science of how we actually learn words. How often do we need to see a word for it to stick?
This is a really complex area, and the truth is, there's no single magic number for word frequency.
Really?
Yeah, some early studies said you only need to see a word twice. Others said you need more, like 20 exposures to really know it and be able to use it actively.
It's a huge range.
It is. And a study with Japanese students found something interesting. After about 5 to 7 encounters with a word in the same text, the learning kind of plateaued. More exposure didn't really help that much more.
So just reading the same word over and over in one book has diminishing returns.
Exactly. And a more recent study found something even more surprising. When they tested active recall, your ability to actually produce the word, they found something strange with nouns.
Or was it?
For nouns, accuracy was highest after maybe 2 to 4 encounters. But when a noun was seen a huge number of times, like 16 or more, the ability to actively recall it actually decreased.
That makes no sense. Why would seeing a word more make you worse at remembering it?
The theory is that it becomes context dependent. Your brain links the word so tightly to that one specific story that it struggles to use it in a new situation. Variety seems to be more important than just raw frequency.
Which is a huge argument for reading many different books, not just one.
Precisely. Now let's add another layer. The difference between learning nouns and verbs.
My guess would be the nouns are easier. Table, chair, they're concrete.
And for passive recognition, just understanding the word when you see it, you'd be right. Nouns are slightly easier to recognize. But when you test for active recognition, the ability to produce the word, the results flip. When exposure was frequent, verbs were learned significantly better than nouns.
So if I see the words run and house the same number of times, I'll be better at actively using run in a conversation. Why?
Well, if we think back to that brain simulation idea, nouns are static objects. Verbs are actions. They're dynamic. They're linked to movement, to syntax, to the core of what's happening.
To the story itself.
Exactly. For your brain to actively use a verb, it needs a deeper, stronger connection tied to those motor and sensory parts of the brain. And reading stories, especially stories full of action, provides the perfect environment for that to happen.
That's incredible. So extensive reading isn't just a great way to learn vocabulary. It's a particularly powerful way to master verbs, which are the engine of speech.
It's cognitive training for language production.
So after all of this, what does it all mean for the listener, for someone who wants to break through that A2B1 plateau?
I think the main conclusion is just crystal clear. Extensive reading is not just a nice idea. It's a scientifically proven method that boosts your skills, your confidence, and your long-term habits way more effectively than traditional methods.
It's the shortcut that works because it works with your brain, not against it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's summarize the key takeaways. First, you have to embrace the philosophy. Read material that is easy. Aim for that 98% level. And read what you find interesting. If a book is boring, drop it.
Second, use the right tools. Get graded readers. They are designed to set you up for success and pleasure, not for struggle.
Third, don't just read passively. Pair it with active practice. Use shadowing for your pronunciation and thinking aloud to build that internal fluency.
And fourth, be consistent. Even 30 minutes a day, most days of the week, will create dramatic results over time. You'll see your reading speed, your comprehension, and your gut feeling for grammar all improve. And a final thought, bringing it back to that neuroscience. Remember, reading fiction is like a practice run for real life. It activates the same parts of your brain used for social interaction and processing real-world situations.
So this raises a final provocative question for you to think about.
Yeah.
If you actually commit to this, if you spend 30 minutes a day reading something easy and fun in your target language, giving your brain that daily simulation, how might you start to see that fictional practice show up in your real-world conversations next week? Go find a book, make sure it's easy, and try it.